Maybe Urban Meyer should be the commissioner of all of college football. He has some ideas on the college football playoffs, and it affects the Big Ten. By the way, I don't agree with him on a lot of it, but we'll give him a listen. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hit that free subscribe button down below so you never miss a single episode. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. All right, Urban wants a 14-team playoff. He's got it all figured out. We also have the latest in the Big Ten tournament for men's basketball. We had a firing, unfortunately, with a coach. Michigan might land another number one rated quarterback. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll have our weekend picks, all that coming up right here. But first, former Ohio State football coach and current Fox college football analyst Urban Meyer. He went on a radio show and he announced his plan for a new college football playoff format. We're always interested in stuff like that. We talk about it all the time. Now, up front, there's not much new here in regards of the fact that he wants a 14-team playoff instead of 12, and he wants the Big Ten getting 4 automatic qualifiers. Not a lot new there. All signs, by the way, point toward that exact thing happening. We're going to expand to 14 teams, Big Ten and the SEC. We'll get 4 teams each, probably in 2026. And by the way, I disagree with all of this. The more we keep expanding, the more we keep messing all this up. But Urban said he did a lot of research on this, and there's some nuance to his plan, so we figured we'd hear him out. Let's do this. He likes the 4-4-2-2-1-1 format. He says he's done a deep dive on it. And he has also said that the ACC and the Big 12 are going to be ticked off with his plan. Gee, I wonder why. They're not going to get as many teams in. That's why. Of course, he has the Big 10 and the SEC automatically getting 4 teams each. That's the 4 and 4 part. No matter what, every year, those conferences get 4 teams each in the playoffs. There would be 2 ACC teams and 2 Big 12 teams. So we're 4-4-2-2. And then we need the 1 and the 1, and that would be him allowing for an at-large team. We all know that's going to be Notre Dame, and therefore the highest-rated group of 5 team gets in for that last spot. All this is for 1 extra spot. Again, nothing new or earth-shattering here, but let's look at his reasoning. So he says that hard and fast rules and automatic qualifiers take man-made selections from committees out of the process. And he says selection committees and the way it's currently set up, it's always going to have human error. There's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be controversy. They're always going to have biases. He says it's an imperfect system. And it's been that way since the days of the dreaded BCS, when we used a combination of humans and computers to come up with the 2 best teams that would play in the national championship each year. How archaic. Do you remember those days back in the day? He's not wrong. He's not wrong about this part. So, I mean, how often did we argue about the BCS process and just coming up with 2 teams? I personally made a career out of it. So, he also seemed to agree with recent comments by Nebraska head coach Matt Rule, who told Meyer on his podcast that there's no way he's scheduling tough teams for their non-conference schedule moving forward. He says the selection committee seems to favor the overall record above anything else. Again, you might not be wrong there. But if a conference knows that it's getting 4 teams in the playoff no matter what, their teams won't be afraid to throw in a tough non-conference match on the schedule with Texas or a Clemson, according to Urban Meyer. Although, I'm still not too sure about that. Because even though coaches keep saying they're more likely to do it, there are always going to be coaches who are shying away from those big games because they don't want the loss no matter what. They figure maybe if they have a hiccup or something later on down the road, they're going to want to have wanted that cupcake win earlier on. So I think some are still hesitant to do all that just in case they're struggling or injured or whatever later on in the year. And when Urban coached at Ohio State, some years he scheduled 3 pre-conference cupcakes, and sometimes he would schedule a big boy mixed in there, and it made for great football. So he says he likes the luxury of knowing that if he loses that big boy game in September, he'll still have a great shot at getting into the playoffs with automatic qualifiers because he knows his team's going to be good every year. So, and he says, look, scheduling these big games, he's not wrong at any of this here. It's great for recruiting. It challenges your team, measures your team where they're at. It's great for the fans. And look, he still knows that no matter what happens in that non-conference game, if he wins the Big Ten, despite that early non-conference loss, he's still going to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs. I would argue that that would still probably happen no matter what, whether we have 4 automatic qualifiers or not. I'll even go so far as to say that the winner of the Big Ten is still going to have an advantageous seed, whether there are 4 teams or 12 teams or 14 teams in the playoffs. And you everydayers here know that I think expansion of the playoffs is wrong. I said it again at the top here today. I think it waters down the regular season. It waters down the rivalries. It allows for just too much leeway that coaches like Urban Meyer are looking for. As a fan, I'm not looking for leeway. I'm looking for a season-long elimination process. Good teams win all their games or most of the games, and good and average teams, they'll pile up a few losses along the way. Then at the end, we start finding out who the best one is for the championship. Amazing idea, right? At the end of the day here, at the end of the season, we're looking for the best team in the country. We want to crown a champion. At some point, these regular season games, they got to mean something. They have to count. If you lose one, I'm sorry. It's going to hurt you. It should hurt you. And yes, that means you get punished for a loss. I still think that it's going to be tough to push this issue of 4 automatic qualifiers in the Big Ten and the SEC on other conferences, even though I know the Big Ten and the SEC have a lot of power and leverage, and they might push this through here starting in 2026. But sometimes, some years, some conferences have bad seasons. Look at the SEC. Do you really think there were 4 teams that were playoff worthy in the SEC this year? No, there weren't. But if these rules were in place, they would force feed us a 4th team, taking a spot from another deserving team. I don't like it. These are the things I don't like about this idea. But I'll tell you what, though, being that you and I are all Big Ten fans, if this is the direction we're going, as a fan, I'm all for it. Let's get the 4 Big Ten teams in. If I'm looking at it from the big picture, I don't necessarily think it's fair. Heck, even Paul Feinbaum doesn't think it's fair because conferences have. Yeah, now I'm agreeing with Feiney. The world's a crazy place. Urban also thinks that by having 4 automatic qualifiers, at least in the Big Ten, for example, that'll keep middle tier teams in the mix until late in the season. The Iowas, the Wisconsins, the Michigan States, they'll all be alive until November with a chance at cracking the playoffs. And he may be right about that. But back to my point, by the time we get to November, I'm not looking to keep teams alive. I'm looking for the best of the best to rise to the top and figure out who's going to be playing for some sort of championship. I'm not really interested in keeping the 7th place team in a playoff race by artificially propping them up with an artificial number that we're going to allow a certain amount of teams in. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Now, get ready for me to absolutely contradict myself because I have picked a lot of this apart from Urban Meyer. On a positive note, I like how guys like Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, for example, he's doing the same thing. They're locked into the process. Even though they're not coaching anymore, they're broadcasters and they're giving their opinions. And a lot of times their opinions, whether you agree with them or not, are well thought out. They understand the game. And I do believe that guys like Urban Meyer and Nick Saban have the best interest of college football at heart. And college football has always lacked leadership. And again, maybe we should make Urban Meyer or Nick Saban commissioner of college football and all report to them and their ideas via the conferences. We've needed a commissioner, just like Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, NHL. They all have commissioners. College football has one. Guys like Urban Meyer or Nick Saban, those are the guys that have the gravitas and the experience I think, to lead us in that direction. Will it ever happen? Probably not, but I certainly think it should. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast here. That way you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And share, like, and follow because that helps us out a lot. Also, don't forget our website, talkbig10.com, where all of our podcasts go. And also there are links there for your favorite teams. You want to buy shirts from your favorite school, hats, t-shirts, all right there for your convenience. So check that out at talkbig10.com. All right, lots to get to here. First of all, Michigan might land another number 1 rated quarterback, still recruiting, even though they have Bryce Underwood. We'll talk about the Big Ten tournament. We lost a coach. He got fired in the Big Ten this week as well. We'll have our picks looking ahead to the weekend. Lots to do right here on this exciting episode of Locked On Big Ten. So we're all about stats, and numbers don't lie. We're very familiar with them. And then it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. These numbers are on an MVP level. They have the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds. It could quite literally carry the entire team plus your gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, their Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. That's nissanusa.com. And if you're watching the excitement of games, make them more exciting with our friends at FanDuel. March Madness is here. FanDuel's giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You can pick your favorite game, your favorite player, underdogs. FanDuel makes it easy to back them with the spreads and the totals and the props and get locked in with all of that. So, and we got tournament games virtually every single day for you, something to put a bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. Appreciate it, especially you everydayers that make this thing go. Meanwhile, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss a single episode. It's free, and it just takes literally 1 second. Share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten as well. Your team every day. And don't forget to check out our website, talkbig10.com, podcasts, and your favorite school team merchandise right there at a click of a button. We're going to get into the men's basketball tournament in just a second. But since we were talking about Urban Meyer a minute ago, he was also a factor in former Buckeyes player Eddie George getting the head coaching job at Bowling Green. The school's athletic director there said that Urban suggested George for the job. And he told him, Urban said, don't even bother researching him. Not that there's anything wrong. Just don't bother researching him. Don't read anything about him. Just go talk to him. Talk to the man. You'll be so impressed. And that's what happened. So I all quickly noticed that George checked all the boxes over there. People, values, growth and development. And he was hired. There you go. He'd been at Tennessee State, coaching there. He played for the Buckeyes from 1992 to 1995, won the Heisman in 95. After that season, he had rushed for 1,800 yards and scored 23 touchdowns. Not too bad. Great, actually. Hey, we can't talk about Ohio State without mentioning Michigan. You know, they already landed the number 1 recruit in the country with 5-star quarterback Bryce Underwood when they flipped him from LSU. Now they might land the number 1 quarterback in the country for the class of 2027. Elijah Haven, remember that name. He's looking forward to visiting Ann Arbor soon. In fact, out of all the schools he's getting ready to visit, he says he's looking forward to visiting Michigan the most. So that tells me they might be top on his list, maybe. He's already 6'5", 210 pounds. Got 2 more years of high school left. During his sophomore season at Dunham High School, scored 50 touchdowns, 50, 38 of them passing. 12 schools have already offered him a scholarship. We know of Auburn, Florida, Florida State, LSU, and Michigan. He's from Baton Rouge, so that would be tough for LSU to lose another number 1 5-star quarterback to Michigan if that's how it plays out. It would happen again. All right, a couple of follow-ups from earlier games in the men's Big Ten basketball tournament on the night that Northwestern beat Minnesota. Minnesota fired their coach, Ben Johnson, right after the game. In fact, they put out a release like at 1 a.m. the next morning. He'd been there for 4 years. It was his alma mater. They never reached the NCAA tournament. He had 2 years left on his deal, so it was only a $2.9 million buyout only. His $1.95 million salary was the lowest in the Big Ten. The Gophers finished 15-17. They lost 5 out of the last 6. They did, though, have some success that were some interesting things for us to talk about here on Locked On Big Ten. They went out west, the West Coast, won back-to-back games against UCLA and USC, and had home wins against Michigan and Oregon. Those were impressive, but they really couldn't keep it rolling. So Northwestern, by the way, moved on. And before they did, though, there was some interesting news from Northwestern because Chris Collins, in front of the media, took a shot at the Big Ten. He said that his team was in a hotel with no air conditioning, and the rooms were all 85 degrees. He said, everywhere we turn, the Big Ten's trying to get us. He says, we're being just, we're used to being treated that way by the league. Now, he was somewhat smirking that way. I think he was referring to some anti-Northwestern officiating this season, but he was pretty hot about it. Well, he literally was hot. His room was 85 degrees, but they moved on. And then when we were doing Thursday's podcast, we were recording it on Wednesday night, and at the time, and we mentioned it while we were taping it, that we still had USC and Rutgers to go from that night. That game ended up going double overtime, 97-89. USC's Desmond Claude had 28, including 10 in the overtime periods. Rutgers' Dylan Harper at 27, 8 rebounds and 8 assists. Ace Bailey, 17. Rutgers' season's over. It finished at 15-17. And then yesterday, the early game on the Big Ten tournament, Indiana, they lose to Oregon, 72-59. Jackson Shellstad had 18. TJ Bamba was 17. This was a 2-point game with 7 minutes to go. But IU went scoreless for 5.5 minutes. So now Indiana's done. They were a bubble team. A lot of people think that they'll be in. They might be in the Tuesday play-in game, maybe. The resume might be good enough to be in. Oregon moves on in the tournament. They take on Michigan State today. More on that in just a second. We told you after Northwestern beat Minnesota, they then had to take on Wisconsin yesterday. Wisconsin won that game. Nolan Winter and John Tonje had 18 points each. Wisconsin moves on to take on UCLA. More on that in a minute. And then Illinois, high-scoring affair, beat Iowa 106-94. Peyton Sandfort closed out the season with 30 points for the Hawkeyes. Kylan Boswell had 27 points and 7 assists for Illinois. Fighting Illini move on to take on Maryland. And we're in that situation again here, getting ready for Friday's podcast here. And it's Thursday night, and USC and Purdue are playing right now. And the winner of this game takes on Michigan tonight. We'll have more on that time-wise as well. So today, the Friday schedule today, depending on when you're watching this podcast, the early game, 12 noon, 9 Pacific. Get up in the morning to watch some Oregon basketball, taking on 7th-ranked Michigan State. And then Wisconsin tips off against UCLA at 2:30 Eastern. That is 11:30 on the West Coast on the Big Ten Network. And then I think maybe the most interesting game of the day, because it's teams, they're good, hard to predict. Illinois versus 11th-ranked Maryland. That is at 6:30 on the Big Ten Network tonight, Eastern Time, 3:30 Pacific. I think that's going to be an interesting game. And then, as I mentioned, the winner of the USC Purdue game taking on Michigan tonight, 22nd ranked Michigan. That'll be at 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 6 o'clock on the West Coast on the Big Ten Network. Looking ahead to the weekend, tomorrow, Saturday, the semifinals are at 1 o'clock Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. And then Sunday, the finals at 3:30. And then Selection Sunday. Monday will be all over. We'll see how many teams are in the from the Big Ten are in the NCAA tournament. Can't wait. Women's as well. And a lot of Big Ten representation expected with all that. So we'll have all of that. And got something a little different for you coming up next. As you know, we make our picks going into the weekend. I'm going to show you odds on winning the whole thing, men and women, and where our Big Ten teams are slotted there. That's all coming up in our picks segment to wind down the week right here on Locked On Big Ten. Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and you wonder, hey, man, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of where all your money goes. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't a budgeting app. I mean, it does that, but it does other things. A complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, your investments, your spending all in one place. And so you just, stop just managing your money, but you start building wealth as well. A lot of great insights showing you where all your money's going. You can break it down. Oh, man, I'm spending a lot of money on food delivery. Got to back off there. All the convenience of, instead of having multiple apps to pay this bill or watch this credit card, just put it all in one place. And, managing money with your partner is easy. You can, your wife, your spouse, whatever, put it all in one place and check it out. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, it's time to take a look at our picks segment. We're going to do something a little different here today. I'm going to put all these on screen. We're going to look at the latest Vegas odds to win it all. Still, we have to find out this weekend how many teams in the Big Ten, men's and women's, are getting into the NCAA tournament. But we have odds that we want to share with you, and we'll put it on full screen. We'll start off with the men. Now, the best odds to win the national championship for the men right now, Duke plus 320, $100 gets you 320. So Duke 320. Cooper Flagg injuring himself in the ACC tournament. I think he'll be okay for the NCAA tournament. But yeah, I don't think you'll see him in the ACC tournament anymore. Auburn, which has been ranked number one most of the year, at plus 350. Florida, another SEC team like Auburn, at plus 600. Houston at plus 800 as well. Kelvin Sampson is here just every year, just getting things rolling. So these first four teams, Florida, they've been ranked highly all year long. Very, very impressive. Now, Alabama drops down to plus 1,200. Nate Oates. This team can score points. I don't know if they can stop anybody. They have a lot of take the over on their games. They're going to score a lot. They're going to give up a lot. That may cost them in the end. Tennessee is plus 1,500. The best rate for a Big Ten team is Michigan State at plus 2,200. $100 gets you 2,200 if Tom Izzo and Michigan State cut down the nets in April. Iowa State, you're going to hear the name TJ Otzelberger a lot. He's their head coach. People like talking about him. Plus 2,500, as is St. John's. You know their coach. That's Rick Pitino. Plus 2,500. Yeah, that's right. Rick Pitino got another team in the show. He doesn't deal with developing young kids. He's just getting the older kids now. He's like, just give me transfers. Just give me transfers every year. Kentucky at plus 3,500 and Texas Tech at plus 4,000. I didn't put anybody else on here because the odds were just too crazy. So let's take a look at the women. UConn, Gino, up at the top again. Plus 300. Again, $100 gets you 300. South Carolina, Dawn Staley defending her national title. Remember, they beat Caitlin Clark in Iowa last year, and the women's final. did a better rating than the men's. They're up there at plus 350. UCLA, plus 475, led by Lauren Betts. She had that 17-point game in the Big Ten title game against USC. The Bruins were ranked number 1 most of the year. So they're rolling back and ready to go. Notre Dame coming in at plus 475 and Texas plus 550. Another Big Ten team. We got USC plus 650. If you haven't seen Juju Watkins play basketball, do it. She has scored as many points in her first 2 years as Caitlin Clark scored in her first 2 years of college basketball. LSU, always in the mix, 40-1. TCU, 75-1. Got Tennessee at 80-1. And for the women, Kansas State, 100-1. And then we got a bunch of Big Ten teams in the mix. Ohio State, they've had a pretty good year. 100-1 odds. Maryland and Michigan at 200-1, as is Michigan State. And Iowa, 250-1 to win it all for the women. And Oregon's Lady Ducks at 300-1. Those are the Big Ten teams with the most realistic chances. There were some others like Indiana and whatnot, but I cut it off right there. So there you have it. There, the odds. If you want to make a little money, FanDuel, go ahead, put something down right now on who's going to win the national championship for the men and women for the basketball NCAA tournament. Hey, there are many ways for you to interact with this podcast. Reach out at Twitter or X at TalkBig10, 10. Also, our website, TalkBig10.com, the number 10, TalkBig10.com, where all of our podcasts go. Plus, we also have links so you can buy merchandise for your favorite school and shirts and hats and T-shirts and merchandise. Show your school spirit for March Madness. Also, before you go, if you can hit that subscribe button, it's just as long as it takes to snap this finger, just click it. That's all the time it takes. It's free. No information is required. And that way you never miss an episode of Locked On Big Ten. And you can follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app, wherever you are, so you never miss an episode each and every day. Since it is the month of March, we have a lot of college basketball to talk about. I want to tell you about my friends, Isaac Shade and Andy Patton with Locked On College Basketball. It's another podcast here on the Locked On family. They got you covered every which way with all the basketball games, keeping you informed. Check them out. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. As far as us, tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is great. This is the only podcast. You'll get a Big Ten podcast on that talks about all 18 teams. And we'll also, in addition to news, give you analysis and opinion, all in one umbrella, plus your opinion as well with the comments. All right here on Locked On Big Ten. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. When we talk on Monday, we'll know who's in the show, men's and women's, for the NCAA tournament. We'll be all over it, plus the latest football news as well. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman. We'll talk to you next time.